Anuradha ma'am, we can start.
So a very warm welcome to all our participants today to NSI Mumbai chapter. And I would like to place my gratitude to Kellogg's for sponsoring this amazing webinar for today. So I would like to now give you a brief idea about Nutrition Society of India and its activities. So Nutrition Society of India, which was established in 1967, is an association of nutrition professionals, programmers, and policymakers from India and abroad, the recognized Indian representative of International Union Nutritional Sciences through the adhering body Indian Nutritional Science Academy and Federation of Asian Societies of India. Nutrition. The society is dedicated to disseminate the results of the latest research in nutrition, basic and applied aspects. It analyzes the current status of nutrition programs in the country and recommends appropriate strategies to promote nutrition of the community at large. What we do under Nutrition Society of India is that we do outreach programs, nutrition and health awareness and training programs. We disseminate scientific information like this is one of those kind of webinars, seminars, conferences, workshops, and we promise you we are going to be bringing you some very amazing webinars and on offline conferences too this year. We have publications and we have 2 right now, nutritional guidelines and training manuals, which we have been developing in Mumbai chapter. Over the last 2 years, we've had about 50 plus webinars. We had 26 plus stand-alone webinars, and we had 4 webinar workshop series with each workshop having about 6 to 10 different webinar sessions. Some of them have been taken so well that there could be a repeat of some of these workshops as well. And I'm very glad to announce that we had received the best NSI chapter in 2019. And also this year, we are getting an appreciation award for the activities conducted during the lockdown. So I'm really proud, and I thank my earlier convener, Dr. Shubhadra Mandalika, for guiding me and giving me the honor of becoming the convener this year. And I have an amazing team of NSI members who are also working non-stop and bringing me activities. And I'm really proud to tell you today that what are some of the activities that we do under NSI. So from April 2022, we've had World Health Day programs in collaboration with Dr. BMN College and College of Home Science, Nirmala Niketan. And we had programs in collaboration with Anjuman Islam College of Home Science, and also we represented in USA Dry Pea and Lentil Council. We had a mega health camp organized in collaboration with MGM College Panvel in the month of May. And we also celebrated Yoga Day by BMN College and Lifeness Science Institute, Milan. The World Breastfeeding Week activities were taken up by various colleges. And as you can see, there are colleges. Lifeness Science Institute did an amazing job in Jogeshwari and Manpur, wherein they delivered a lot of, I think they did an amazing job with breastfeeding. And even MGM College, MP Shah Women's College, Anjuman Islam and Dr. BMN College added to the kind of activities that we did in this particular month. Apart from this, what will you get out of joining as an NSI member? You get latest scientific updates. You can be an author for writing articles for various publications by NSI Mumbai chapter. You can also give us some nice social media posts, which can be scrutinized by us and immediately uploaded. Get an opportunity to present papers at national conferences, and also student discounts in some of the seminars which are organized by us, by NSI. So if you want more details, please do visit our website, which has been given on on the screen. So if you want to follow us, we are very, very active on Facebook, YouTube, and Insta. So please do go and see the kind of posts that we are uploading. So for more information, you can definitely log on to our website and reach us out. Now, coming to the theme, since we are celebrating the National Nutrition Month, our objective for today's webinar is to celebrate this Nutrition Month and get to know about what exactly is the theme for this year. So on March, as you all know, 2018, Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched Holistic Nutrition Poshan Abhiyan, which is also known as National Nutrition Mission. The government's flagship program is to improve nutritional outcomes for children under 6 years of age, pregnant women, and lactating mothers. The aim of Poshan Abhiyan, celebrated annually in the month of September, is to address the challenge of malnutrition in a mission mode. This year, India is celebrating the 5th Rashtriya Poshan Maah. This year, the objective is to trigger Poshan Maah through Gram Panchayats as Poshan Panchayats, with a key focus on Mahila or Swasth, that is women and health, and Bacha or Siksha, that is child and education, that means studying as well as eating. The other objectives being gender-sensitive water conservation and management, and traditional foods for mother and children in tribal areas. Since we are also celebrating International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development, it is important for us to know about it. So the Sustainable Development Goals, which are called SDGs, also known as Global Goals, were adopted by the United Nations in 2015 as a universal call to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. There are 17 Sustainable Developmental Goals. These integrated 17 SDGs recognize the action in one area will affect outcomes in others, and that development must balance social, economic, and environmental sustainability. United Nations also declared the year 2022 as the International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development and focuses on links between basic sciences and the Sustainable Development Goals. Much of India's development agenda is mirrored in the Sustainable Development Goals. So keeping this in mind, today's webinar highlights food system approach towards food and nutrient security. So we have two amazing speakers who are going to be speaking on these aspects. And the food that we are eating and a balanced meal is not very easy for everybody to get. And processing is an answer for this. And today we will be focusing on various challenges that we have in front of us. And some of the pressing food challenges we have is improving existing food systems, build on the heritage and foundation of existing systems, which develop collective solutions, which should include new technological breakthroughs and cutting-edge farming techniques, transition from linear to circular food systems which prioritizes regenerative production, reduces resource inputs, and aims ensure recovery of future uses and minimizes wastage. So keeping this as our theme today, we have two amazing speakers who will enlighten us on these approaches. I invite Mrs. Madhavi Sathe to introduce Mr. Neil McGowan. So Madhavi.
Thank you, Anuradha. Good evening, one and all. We begin the first session of the day with Mr. Neil McGowan. Mr. Neil is the Global Senior Director for Regulatory and Well-being with the Kellogg Company. He holds a bachelor's degree in biochemistry and a master's in food science from University College, Dublin. He has over 20 years of experience in the food industry. Mr. Neil joined Kellogg's in 2013, where he now leads a team of talented professionals delivering Kellogg's well-being strategy and monitoring the changing global food regulatory landscape. He represented the Irish food and drink industry through his trade association work and has previously held a variety of regulatory and nutrition-related roles across the food sector. A good food system, like Anuradha says, is not an easy job. makes food available and accessible to people from the farm to the table. A food system has many steps with variety of inputs. Before the food reaches us, it may need to change its form, making it convenient for us to eat and derive nutrition from it. In addition, the same food has to be made safe for consumption and should appeal through the sensory qualities. And this is where the food industry steps in. On behalf of the NSI Mumbai chapter, I welcome Mr. Neil, and we look forward to your thoughts on the topic food system approach and the role of the food industry. Welcome, Mr. Neil, and you can start your session now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madhvi and Anuradha, and to the entire NSI Mumbai chapter. It's a really great pleasure to be here with you today. The first challenge for me is to make sure I'm presenting my screen correctly. So perhaps you can help confirm that you can indeed see it.
It's shared, Neil.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be with you here with you today. Kellogg has always valued forums like this because it's through discussion and dialogue across multi-stakeholders that we will create a better food system. And I'm here to talk to you about Kellogg's approach as it pertains to the food system, some of the work that we're doing. And as Madhvi mentioned, I have 20 years of experience within the food industry more generally, so happy to field questions more widely. But I will try to give an industry view and apply it to my own daily role within the Kellogg company. So as we think about the food system, we know that it's under pressure today. It's not optimal. We have rising cases of malnutrition, all forms, obesity, hidden hunger, starvation, all on the rise. So we know that it exists in most countries at the same time. We know as we look forward in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, we'll have more people. That's more mouths to feed. And we know most of those people will live in cities. We know that the food industry is responsible for about a third of the greenhouse gases that are emitted from carbon emissions. So we see that when it comes to sustainability, how we make our food and how we grow our food and how we sell our food will be very important moving forward. We know that in order to feed more people, we will need to produce more calories. And we already know on our system today that almost 30% of our food that we currently produce is lost or wasted along the supply chain, either at farm level or through to consumer. And we also know that over 1/3 of the world's population can't afford a healthy or sustainable diet. And so these are challenges that the food system and our work together is going to have to try to address. We know where we want to go. The World Health Organization has been very clear on the future of where our system should go. And I find this definition so inspiring that I wanted to share it with you. It talks about the future of healthy and sustainable diets. And it talks about dietary patterns that promote all dimensions of individuals' health and well-being, that have low environmental pressure and impact, are accessible, affordable, safe, equitable, and culturally relevant. Now that's a lot, but I think it's such a beautiful definition of what our diets of the future must look like and the challenges that we all have to work together to try to to try to achieve. So I think it just sets a beautiful vision of the future for what we should be aiming for. We know as a food company and as a food industry, and it's society in general, that there is societal change happening. So we know we'll have to change this food system against a wider agenda of what is going on in the world. The climate is changing. Social justice is happening right across the world. There are changes in that. Connectivity. We are more connected than ever before. And I was so delighted to see that the NSI Mumbai is on Insta and Facebook, and you can have one more follower for sure after this. But we are becoming so much more connected. And also, as I said, we're starting to live more and more in cities. People are moving towards cities. How we think about health has changed as well. In the past, it's been about the absence of illness or disease. And as referenced by that WHO definition, it's now much more about positive emotional, mental, and physical well-being. So people are being more proactive in terms of how they think about their health and how they take care of themselves. And Anuradha mentioned the Sustainable Development Goals. And again, I think they set a wonderful framework for how everybody and all players across the food system can take action for a better food system. Kellogg's, my company, is very interested in the Sustainable Development Goals, has signed up to take action where we believe we can, because we believe it matches very closely with the vision and purpose of our company. Our vision talks about a good and just world where people are not just fed but fulfilled, and we aim to create better days and a place at the table through our foods and our brands. So I hope you can see that there is an agreement between the Sustainable Development Goals and a company like Kellogg's. It's so important that those visions of the future align. At Kellogg, what we do is we design foods in three ways. We use physical, emotional, and societal well-being to think about how we design our foods. Physical well-being is about the pure nutrition element of our food, and how that is brought to life for us is through nutrient density and food patterns. We think about the role of the food, how the food will be consumed, what it will be consumed with, what it will be consumed instead of, and try to design our foods in that way. We know that food has a huge emotional connection. Food plays such a central part of people's lives. We sometimes take it for granted, but sitting at the breakfast table, in the case of Kellogg's, having cereal together, talking about the future of your day, it brings such an element of well-being to individuals to talk about their problems, to talk about their hopes and aspirations for the day. We think it's important that meal occasions are really considered. And so food has such an integral part throughout all of our daily lives. We talk about emotional well-being. And we talk about finally about societal well-being. We know the food and the food that we sell has an impact on the people and the communities across the planet who have inputted into providing those ingredients. The farmers who grow the corn and wheat and the rice, and the packaging we use, the end of what happens after the food has been consumed. We think about that, and we try to think about the impact of that. So what we try to do is use systems thinking. As a food company, we believe our foods have to be designed holistically to deliver safe and nutritious foods that promote societal, economical, and environmental it's really difficult. Food choices are interconnected, and every decision has trade-offs throughout the system. But what we know is that systems thinking allows us to identify the opportunities that support real and long-term behavior change. I'll just bring that to life with a quick example. We often talk about foods as healthy or unhealthy, good or bad. What we often forget to ask is some simple questions. What is the food being eaten with? How much? What's it being eaten instead of? And how often is it being consumed? Is it a birthday cake, for example, or a traditional food that's eaten at a specific time of the year? We know that these questions often don't come into policies because it's easy sometimes for regulators to say black and white, good and bad. And so these questions are difficult. But as a food company who has the power to design our foods, we think it's important that we ask those questions when we're making our foods. I would say the food industry has a tremendous opportunity to improve the food system. This is not something for any company to be afraid of or to be nervous about. And within a food company, the best place for improvement of our foods is within the R&D, research and development, and innovation part of the organization. Because improving the food system is all about innovation. For companies, it's all about innovation. It's an innovation problem. And so thinking about that, we can think about some principles around how we innovate and how we think about bringing new foods to market to make a better food system. The first thing is we can build on the system we have. I outlined the problems of the system today, and certainly they are big and important, but we shouldn't forget that food has never been safer, it's never been more affordable, and it's never been more accessible than it is today. That's not to say we're at the end of the journey by any means on any of those things, but it's to recognize the progress that we all have made over so many years of hard work. We know that people want year-round choices to interesting and enjoyable foods, but there are still problems. Malnutrition still exists everywhere. To bring it to life, from a Kellogg perspective, 1 in 6 kids go to school without breakfast in the UK, 1 in 6. And that number is rising, not declining. So you think about the impact of that on their day, on their ability to perform well at school, to concentrate. We cannot forget 1 in 6. One of the things that I like to think about when we talk about building on the systems we have is to recognize some of the good things that have happened in the past. And certainly Kellogg's has some activity in the space around our fortification work. We believe that fortification of foods that are consumed every day has the potential to minimize disease. And I'm Irish, and I can give you a small statistic from Ireland just to bring this to life for a moment, if you can indulge me. Between 2004 and 2018, the intake of vitamin D in Irish children increased from 50% of the recommended amount to 80%. As we all know, vitamin D is the sunshine vitamin. And if you know one thing about Ireland, you probably know that it rains a lot. And I can tell you, over 15 years, it hasn't got any sunnier. And oftentimes I wish I was in a nice warm country like India. But unfortunately, it hasn't got any better. So how has the intake of vitamin D in Irish kids improved? Well, in 2010, Kellogg's recognized this, started to fortify our foods with vitamin D, And now vitamin D cereals are the largest contributor to vitamin D in the diet patterns of Irish kids. So I think that's something to be proud of. It's something I'm proud of, and I know many in my company are. But it's just a simple example of where simple action can make help us towards a better food system. Thinking about India, we know that the prevalence of anemia in women and children is about 53% estimated from the World Health Organization. And we know that cereal is encouraged to be fortified. And we can certainly hope that as cereal is consumed, it is making a contribution towards the iron intakes of women and children, again, improving the food system. It's work that we know how to do. We do it across the world, and we can tailor it to the public health requirements for a better system. It's what we try to do. Secondly, in terms of a principle, we try to aim for circularity. What I talk about is that we often think of the food chain as a series of links from the farmer or the seed producers to the farmer, right the way through to the consumer. And when you think about that, at the end of that with the consumer, there has to be waste. Whatever transaction happens along the chain has to end up with the consumer. And at the end, the consumer has something that they are likely to waste. How can we move from a system that is a chain to a system that is interconnected, that is more circular? How can we know that this will take time and money? But we know that it's a valuable thing to do. 30% of food is lost or wasted along our supply chain. How can we think about using that waste? Upcycling food, upcycling ingredients. I'll just give you a Kellogg example here. 75% of the potatoes in Pringles are rejected. They're broken potatoes that would have gone to landfill, but we are then able to upcycle them and reuse them for our Pringles production. Fruit filling in Nutri-Grain bars is misshapen fruit. It is ugly fruit. Would often be thrown away. We managed to upcycle it and to use it in our Nutri-Grain bars. It's really important to think about circularity, and to think about this. We should build on something that many companies and many regulators and many policymakers have already been quite successful in, or are putting a lot of effort into, around sustainable packaging. We follow the principles of a circular economy there. We aim to make everything reusable, recyclable, or compostable. For Kellogg's, we continue to work on that. 85% of our global packaging is recyclable, reusable, or compostable. And plastic is less than 10% of our overall portfolio. We still have work to do to reduce that and to make a fully circular system, but we are going to continue working on that, aiming to reduce, remove, recycle, and redesign, following those principles of a circular approach, aiming that nothing is wasted. The third principle that I'd like to talk about is collective solutions. We know that as one company, we have a small footprint in the overall scale of those problems that I outlined. And so any single player cannot on their own make a better food system, or cannot get the scale that we need for a better food system. So we know that partnerships are so critical. We know that we need to work with farmers, with suppliers, with consumers, and with policymakers. We have a shared responsibility, and there is a shared benefit in it. We already saw at the start of the presentation the vision from the World Health Organization and the Sustainable Development Goals. How can we work together to get there? Because without that, we will simply fail. We are trying to work with our farmers, supporting them to produce more sustainably, both from an economic and a climate perspective. We have an ingrained program that rewards our rice growers to lower their greenhouse gas emissions. And so if they are able to do that, they will be financially rewarded for doing so. We know, just to give you an example, that we can build partnerships in our food as well. We know that 90% of people in the world don't consume enough fiber. And the best place to get it is through grains. And Kellogg fundamentally is a grain company. We know, and we're very interested in the science of the microbiome and of gut health. But we are partnering with our suppliers, with people right along the supply throughout the system to explore the benefits of fiber, to build ecosystems around it, and to launch foods that consumers will like and enjoy and eat to close that fiber gap. We know that it is a huge opportunity for a company like Kellogg's across the system. Finally, if I can say, I think it's really important that we embrace people's local food language. Everybody, every country in the world, every culture in the world, I like to say, speaks its own food language. We need to, whatever that language is, we need to work to make the better choice, the convenient and relevant choice for them. And so we must be inspired by what they do, how they eat, the cultures that they live in. We know people are looking for more sustainable, affordable, and nutritious options. But we also know that they still want great taste, enjoyment, and cultural relevance. Many people want to explore the world through food. That is a huge opportunity for any food company looking to make relevant, nutritious foods. I'll give you an example from our work. We use a chef in residency program where we bring chefs from diverse backgrounds into our company, into research and development. And it's part of our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it helps chefs from different backgrounds understand how food companies develop new foods. But it's a win-win because it also introduced Kellogg's to new tastes and ingredients and flavors that we can then try to develop foods around. So we know that this is one way that we can work to embrace food culture and to make cultural connections through our food. If I think about the future and think forward 10 years, there's a couple of reflections that I have. The impact of food production on climate change will become even sharper. And so the problem of the food system will become even more difficult to solve, meaning that we will need partnerships and to work together for a better future. We know that people will continue to develop new health strategies and that the expectations will arise for nutrient-dense foods with benefits across fiber and protein across different life stages. Again, a significant opportunity for the food industry. And without access to affordable nutrient-dense foods, we will have to find new business models, new ways to engage with consumers and new technologies to improve access to a more equitable system. So overall, companies like Kellogg and the industry in general should be thinking about how we make the better choice the easiest choice. There are a couple of things that we will need to enable that. We will need leadership from governments, from the World Health Organization, but from industry too, from scientists, from academics. We will need partnerships. We need better data. We need better data. I was able to give you that example around vitamin D in Irish diets because the data is tremendous and the work of the academics there is best in class. But too often we're making decisions on out of date or incomplete data. We need to think about systems thinking. We need those skills. We need everybody to be thinking about systems thinking. Every decision has a trade-off somewhere else in the system that we need to understand. And we need to embrace the complexity of food. It's a tremendously difficult problem to solve. And black and white thinking, good or bad, healthy or unhealthy, sustainable or unsustainable, these are really clear and simple comments to make, but they can be difficult to back up when you start to think about the trade-offs in the system. It's much easier to embrace that complexity and to try to work within it. And finally, we need new technologies. Technologies have helped us to get safer, more accessible, and more affordable foods packed in a way that is easily accessible by consumers. But we need to continue our scientific research, and we need to continue to develop new technologies for a better food system. With that, I think I'm at time, so I better stop talking, but say thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Neil. That was a wonderful talk. You explained very well how Kellogg thinks or any food industry thinks. And hello?
You are audible. Continue, Madhuri.
Hello? Yes. So how a food industry thinks when they design products. I think when we keep in mind the food systems, it has to be interdisciplinary, it has to be collaborative, there have to be partnerships and a good supply chain management. I think all this would go into building a good sustainable food system. I had a few questions for you. If I may take the first question.
Of course.
Yeah. So, Anuradha is asking that if many processed foods are fortified and we consume a lot of these various products, would it lead to toxicities or can it cause other nutritional deficiencies?
I think it's very important for the food industry to understand the science and also to understand the regulation. And there needs to be robust and rigorous regulation around food fortification based on the best available science. When it comes to Kellogg's, we have a long history of fortification in our foods. We've been doing it for about 80 years, closing gaps in using fortification. And it's a skill. It's a skill and it's an understanding that you need to develop. So I think as a startup company or something like that, you would be very cautious around fortification. But I think in a well-regulated environment based on sound science and with companies who are aiming to do it for a responsible public health benefit, then I think it's a really valuable tool. The World Health Organization has said that it is a positive tool in the fight. It's not the only one, of course. It doesn't solve all of the problems, but I think it can help to solve some.
Okay. When we think of processed food, the thought that immediately comes to mind is it must be high in fat or sugar or salt. So how do you balance, because the prevalence of obesity and other chronic diseases is increasing. So how do you balance this perception of processed food and make it more suitable for, people with obesity or people with chronic diseases?
Yeah. Well, firstly, almost all food is processed. So as soon as it's taken out of the ground, the food is processed to a certain extent. And we know that most people live in cities and don't have access to maybe fresh fruit and vegetables or the completely unprocessed foods. So the question then is, how can you feed those people in a way that is healthy and sustainable? I would argue that there's not necessarily a link between processing and high fat, sugar, and salt. It's certainly not something that we think about. It is defined, high fat, sugar, and salt, in many different ways across the world, from the UK, France, Australia, India, the US, and South America. Many people think about what is high fat, sugar, and salt in different ways. So it's easy to say, yes, if a food is made in a factory, then it must be high in fat, sugar, and salt. But we are aiming to take grains and turn them from grains into foods that people will enjoy in the place that they live. We have a responsibility to do that in a way that is ensuring that foods are not excessively high in fat, sugar, and salt. And the one thing I would say is, as you think about that high fat, sugar, and salt, what are the options when a consumer is going to eat that food? What are the other options that they might choose? What are they going to eat that food with? How much of it are they going to eat? How often are they going to eat it? So I think there's a complexity to the debate that we need to embrace.
Coming back to the question on fortification, there is a question by Dr. Sheetal. Is fortification country specific, and how much to fortify is decided by whom?
For Kellogg's, it's country or region specific, but there are in most countries fortification regulations based on science that we and all other food companies should be complying with. So yes, it can be country specific. Regulators or governments can notice that there is a specific public health problem that they are trying to solve, and they can either regulate it or work with the industry to address it. One example I can give you is around neural tube defects in the US and the UK. In both of those cases, the governments came to Kellogg and said, will you fortify cereals with folic acid so that women are folic status is adequate to avoid neural tube defects? And that's something that we do on request, and now it's regulated, of course. So I think it does change by country and by continent as well.
Okay. So thank you, Neil, for this wonderful interaction. We had a very apt resource person for the first session. We hope to see you again in future. I thank Kellogg's for suggesting your name, and thank you very much. I now hand over the mic to Dr. Sheetal to conduct the second session. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhvi ma'am. Moving forward, we have a very eminent speaker today with us, Professor K.C. Bansal.
Shital, can you make it full screen?
Just a second.
Should I share the screen?
Yes, if you can. I think so. There's some issue here. Thank you.
Yeah, please go ahead.
As I was mentioning, we have a very eminent speaker with us today, Professor K.C. Bansal. He has a PhD with a gold medal from Indian Agricultural Research Institute, New Delhi. He has pursued advanced research from Harvard University, Cambridge, USA. And he is the first to get selected for the prestigious Norman Borlaug Chair for Crop Improvement in India by ICAR. Professor Bansal is a fellow of National Academy of Agricultural Sciences and National Academy of Sciences. Next, please. He has a lot of feathers in his cap, to name a few. He's a secretary of the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences and a member board of trustees of the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, Chennai. Formerly, he was director, National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources, New Delhi, and he was elected as vice chair from Asia for the 15th regular session on Commission of Genetic Resources of Food and Agriculture of the United Nations 2013 to 2015. Professor Bansal has published over 150 research papers and book chapters and supervised over 20 doctoral students. He was conferred upon the Research Leadership Award for his outstanding contributions in research, education, coordination, and management. Next, please. He has won several awards at national and international levels. The highest award of ICAR for an individual contribution, the Rafi Ahmad Kidwai Award, an award of the Indian Science Congress conferred upon by the Honorable Prime Minister of India. He has been also conferred with the Biotech Career Award of the Rockefeller Foundation, USA, a recognition award of the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences, Haryana Vigyan Ratna conferred upon by the Honorable Governor and Chief Minister of Haryana, and last but not the least, what we are aware of, the second highest award of the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences conferred by the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Government of India. With such an eminent speaker, it is a privilege to introduce him to the audience today. And he will be speaking on the topic, New Technology Breakthrough, Genome Editing for Nutrition Security. I welcome Professor Bansal to take it forward. Professor Bansal.
Sure. Give me a minute, please. I'm trying to share my slides. And can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear. We can.
Can you see my slides, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. First of all, I thank Dr. Subhadra, Madam Anuradha, and importantly again, Dr. Sashikaran for giving me this opportunity to talk to all the young students and participants and all the members associated with Nutrition Society of India, the Mumbai chapter. I'm very excited to be talking today, on the new technological breakthroughs, but then I'll be focusing on genome editing for nutrition security. Well, after listening to Dr. Neil's talk, which was quite, was an eminent presentation, I would say, intellectually very sound, with regard to the role of Kellogg's, and taking care of all aspects of sustainability or climate change and of course nutrition, of the people around. And that was more from a developmental, point of view, the presentation, which I enjoyed very much. But then what I'm going to talk to you all, the participants here, is basically more of a science seminar, giving an overview of a new technology. It's not only just a technology per se, it's a biotechnology basically I'm talking about, and that is genome editing, technology for improving nutrition security. And as we all know that nutrition security, of course, is important, but at the same time, 2022 happens to be the International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development. So these technologies, what I'm going to talk about it primarily, genome editing, is actually speaking based on some of the very important basic science work which was carried out by people around the world. So if I go to the next slide, science and societal needs we're all worried about, today in this era of climate change and conflicts and COVID. And therefore, friends, agriculture, food, and nutrition will always remain important. And when we talk of, as has been also mentioned in various ways by Mr. Neil, that food availability is important, accessibility is also important, and more important is affordability. And that too of a nutritional rich diet, which is important. And then we must also try to take all those actions, technologies and biotechnologies, which will help us to keep our environment more clean and green. And particularly in India, we talk about mostly because we are an agrarian-based economy and we have got a large number of smallholder farmers. So for us, it's important also, of course, globally as well, to take care of the farmers' welfare. And we must also not forget that India is one of the most populated countries in the world, and population will keep rising. And as it was mentioned by Mr. Neil as well, it's likely to be globally, 10 billion by 2050. So these are some of the 21st century challenges, if we talk about it: malnutrition and climate change and land degradation. I'm not going to talk about all of them, of course, but going to focus mostly on malnutrition. But some of the key figures are here, which are very well known. People know about it, is that there are about 800 million people who are insecure with regard to food availability. And then there are 2.1 billion people who are overweight or obese. These are the global figures. And then 2 billion people, over 2 billion people actually suffer from micronutrient deficiencies. And why I'm also talking at the same time the issue of climate change, because if we want to tackle this issue of malnutrition, we must also not forget that we have got certain challenges, like climate change, which is reducing the production, agriculture production, by 2%, while the demand is going to increase 14% every decade until 2050. So we must try to have those measures either to mitigate or adapt whatever is possible to take care of the climate change. And yields of some of the major crops will be reduced by 8%, particularly in Africa and South Asia by 2050. So, this is therefore important that we have a holistic approach, as also was mentioned, I believe, by Mr. Neil, that when we tackle malnutrition, we must also address all those challenges which are related with the climate change or land degradation for that matter. And of course, I again remind you all about the Sustainable Developmental Goals, which the United Nations, presented to the whole world 15 years ago in 2015, and which are supposed to be achieved by 2030. And there are 17 of them here, but I'm just talking one, which is more important with regard to today's seminar, I believe, or otherwise with regard to food systems, and that is we end hunger and we achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. These are very important words, and it's a very important message. While we try to end the hunger, and we try to attain food security and improve nutrition, but let's not forget about sustainability of it, the way we want to, with least impact on the environment. And, I'm going to basically talk to you about, Mr. Neil and all otherwise nutrition experts do talk about fortification, but I'm going to mostly talk to you about biofortification, actually speaking. Can we try to empower or enrich our food crops, which we consume on a daily basis, with any level of nutrition which is required, be it micronutrients, be it vitamins, be it phytonutrients, be it essential amino acids, or be it carotenoids, and all, which are important for in various ways, keep us healthy. So in general, that's one message. Another that I'm going to talk to you more about biofortification. Second, that we must also try to combine the high yield potential of these crops which are consumed on a daily basis. For example, rice, wheat. In India, we talk about mostly pulses, chickpea, green gram, or even including oil seeds or fruits and vegetables. They all need to be not only enriched with some of those nutrients, but also we must be able to harvest a bountiful harvest of those for the benefit of farmers. That means we try to maintain the high yield levels, which is important. So this is a challenge before the plant breeders to combine, high yielding capacity of some of those major crops and high nutrients as well of different kinds I just mentioned. So for this, we use various approaches. Here, I'm just going to show an approach which we call traditional plant breeding approach. Here, two different varieties are crossed, and a new variety is developed. Idea of crossing the two varieties here is that this is a commercial variety which is high yielding, and this has, let's say, high nutrient content. So we may like to bring that high nutrient content to this variety while maintaining its high yield potential, and can we therefore have a new variety combining the both, both the traits. So that's what we try to achieve, through traditional plant breeding, and which has been going on, for the last about, I would say, 100 years, globally, and India as well, for improving some of those developing new plant varieties. And I'm just going to tell you the power of this traditional breeding is very important, which was harnessed by Dr. Norman Borlaug, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970 for increasing the yield potential, of wheat, let's say from 1 to 2 tons. Now today we're talking about 5 to 6 tons per hectare. So this is actually, I'm talking about so importantly, because we must not forget that the systematic plant breeding, the traditional plant breeding as an approach, as a technology, has given us enough dividends, and it gave birth to green revolution, both in case of rice and wheat. And today we are self-sufficient in India. And even during COVID time, we were able to take care of ourselves, without importing much of the food from elsewhere. And we contribute all this success to these two great leaders, Dr. Swaminathan and Dr. Norman Borlaug. And then recently, just on October 16, 2020, Honorable Prime Minister of India dedicated some 71, varieties of various crops listed here, which are biofortified, with various nutrients I mentioned before, various micronutrients, be it iron, be it zinc, calcium, or carotenoids, or anthocyanins, or some of the essential amino acids, depending upon the crop. So these 71, varieties were dedicated by Honorable Prime Minister of India only about 2 years ago, and which include like rice, wheat, maize, some of our cereal crops, millets, very, very important, oilseed crops like mustard, linseed, soybean, groundnut, vegetables, etc., and even fruit like pomegranate. These were all nutritionally enriched using the conventional breeding methods. But then, conventional breeding methods as a technology, though it's important, but it has its own demerits. It takes too much of time, and at times we're not sure to get a predicted requirement or predicted improvement in a particular crop variety. So here, on one hand, in the previous slide, I mentioned to you about only increasing the yield level per hectare, those rice and wheat varieties. And here we are talking of enriching those rice and wheat and many other varieties of different crops, with various nutrients. So the idea is to combine both, and this is the way we're moving forward. But then we are now moving away from conventional plant breeding for various demerits I mentioned. I am not going into the details. And we are talking about emerging science-based technologies. So there are two different technologies which we've been talking about, let's say for the last about 25 years, in case of genetic engineering, and for the last only about 10 years, and that is genome editing. Genetic engineering allows you to introduce a gene from any unrelated source to a given plant species, host plant species, and you develop GM crops. I'm not going to talk about it today, but if there are certain questions, I'll be happy to answer those as well. But what I'm going to focus in my rest of presentation about this new technology, biotechnology, which took birth in 2012, and we call it genome editing, which is again nothing, but it's a targeted breeding. It's more precise. Whereas conventional plant breeding is more of an art as well at times. You cannot predict the outcome, and it takes a lot of time. And there are many other technical issues with that, while we have made a lot of progress, no doubt. But here, with genome editing, it is quite precise, it's quite accurate. You can predict the outcome, and it's a targeted breeding, for a particular trait which you require. And I'm going to explain to you a few of those traits with regard to nutrition during later part of my presentation. Now, genome editing, actually speaking, we call it globally, has emerged as a game changer with huge potential to contribute significantly to food security. These are our general messages. Climate resilience and nutrition security is always a part of it, and sustainable development. So this is all are important. Not only nutrition security alone can be tackled, it has to be along with food security, climate resilience, and sustainable development. Further, in India, of course, I mentioned before, we need to give more emphasis on oilseeds and pulses, and again, for enriching them with, higher nutritional content, and focus need to be also on saving land, water, fertilizers, pesticides, and time. And time I'm saying here because traditional plant breeding will take anywhere about 10 to 12 years to develop a variety, a product, whereas using genome editing, that could be achieved just in 2 to 4 years, depending upon the trait and the crop we're talking about. And of course, I mentioned before, meeting sustainable development goals are very important. We have only just less than 10 years before we try to achieve them by 2030. Well, I don't want to go into the technical details. I can understand the audience is not very prepared, or in a way to go into the nitty-gritty of those finer details of the technology. But I would only just mention here that this technology, as I said before, took birth in just less than 10 years ago, and it was developed by two women scientists, one from America, another from France, and both of them were awarded Nobel Prize in 2020. And this technology has, really speaking, shaken the whole world with regard to its utilization, be it in agriculture, be it in environment, or microbes, or human health, or animal health. It's really making waves. Here, actually speaking, the idea is that you make a double strand in the, you make a double strand break, in the double-stranded DNA, you make a break here, and that break is then repaired by various means, and you can, as a result, try to create a mutation, which will be useful, for a given trait in a given crop. And that's what I've described here. I'm not going into the details of it, but this was something never possible before it was discovered by these two wonderful women scientists in 2012. And this is entirely based on basic sciences, as we are celebrating International Year of Basic Sciences and Sustainable Development. So once we have this technology now available with us, we only imagine that what all we can achieve using this technology, and that is possible when we talk about development part of it, including sustainable development. And this is just a procedure. Again, I don't want to go into the details of it. It takes about 2 to 4 years from one end to reach to the another end for developing an edited crop with improved traits, which could be any of those traits I mentioned before, including nutrition. But one of the most important aspects here is, compared to GM crops of this technology, is in GM crops, by choice, we were transferring a gene from an unrelated source to a plant. And that unrelated source could be a microbe, could be a yeast, could be a bacteria, could be even, fish or any vertebrates, or mammals. Those genes could be taken and could be introduced into plants for improving various traits. But here, the difference compared to GM technology and this genome editing technology is that you try to make the changes, what are desired changes within the genome of the host plant itself. You don't bring any gene from outside, from a foreign source. So therefore, you don't call them GM crops or GM organisms. And while the technology is based on introduction of foreign genes in the beginning, but later part of it, through selfing and through traditional plant breeding approaches, we get rid of those transgenes. So finally, we have this product available here, which is a genome edited plant or crop without transgenes. The transgenes which were present until this stage here, we were present here, but then through this technology of selfing or crossing, they get rid of that foreign DNA. So therefore, this is a technology based on the modern advances in sciences of biotechnology, just like GM crops, but it is not GM. And it saves a lot of time. It is quite precise and accurate, I mentioned before. So we're all excited actually, to use this technology for various developmental activities. And because there's no foreign DNA, and I'm sure you all know about it, the GM crops are regulated heavily, not only in India, across the world. And it takes away a lot of money, a lot of time, resources, finally to have a product available to the farmers. In India, we have only one crop, BT cotton, in the last about 20, 25 years of efforts, not beyond that. But whereas these crops, from the regulation point of view, are considered as non-GMOs, non-genetically modified crops. They are non-GMOs. And simply because many of the countries shown in green here, they call it, if there's no foreign DNA present, they will be like non-GMO. And similarly in India, two categories of crops where we confirm that there's no foreign DNA present. Government of India, only about a few months ago, let's say on 30th March 2022, when office memorandum was issued by Government of India, there are certain categories of genome edited crops will not be coming under the purview of biosafety assessment, which are otherwise subjected to GM crops. So now coming to the examples, the application of this genome technology for biofortification point of view. I give an example of biofortification using conventional plant breeding, where so many varieties were released, which is possible even to continue even today. But I said before, they have their own, kind of merits and demerits, and particularly it takes a lot of time. But here, this technology, I've already talked to you about it, about its advantages, and it's a wonderful way to move forward. And some of the crops, which have been developed, for example, soybean, has been developed, which is containing 80% oleic acid, 20% less saturated fatty acid, no trans fat present here at all. Frying time life is 3 times more, and it is a longer shelf life. So all these traits could not have been possible to be achieved through conventional plant breeding. Also, there are technical difficulties. Not only that it takes time, sometimes even it is impossible. Whereas this technology makes it possible to achieve the kind of results which I'm talking about, for example. And this has been already commercialized, in US by a particular company, called Kellogg, and they've named it as high oleic, soybean oil, and its own advantages. And it happened only just about 3 years ago. And next is a tomato, which is enriched with alpha, aminobutyric acid, which is gamma aminobutyric acid, which has been increased, in these tomatoes. I'm showing you this histogram from one of the papers, wherein this GABA, this is, gamma aminobutyric acid. It's a non-proteinaceous amino acid, but it is very good for health, for relaxation of muscles or lowering of blood pressure, etc. And tomato is something which is, world-renowned kind of vegetable, accepted easily by everyone. And here the technology has allowed to increase the level of this GABA. If you measure in terms of milligram per 100 gram fresh weight, if it was somewhere around, let's say 10 to 15 in non-edited crop, or host plant, original host plant, you can see it has increased up to level of 100, 10 times more roughly. These are two different plants, plant number 21 and plant number 3, and these are different variants using different genes, and you can see here in both the plants, the amount of GABA in terms of milligram per 100 gram fresh weight is substantially way high, than what was present in non-edited plant. And this is tomato, I'm talking about it, which has already been also commercialized in Japan, I believe sometimes, in 2021. So the news item, there in Japan. And this is, again, I'm talking about this gamma aminobutyric acid. Amino acid believed to aid relaxation and help lower blood pressure, which has been commercialized. And this has happened so quickly. You can imagine, I said before, only about 10 years ago, genome editing, came into picture. And just in less than 10 years, I've talked to you about this particular product has already been commercialized. And some of those products which are now being developed further, is a high lycopene tomato, which has been shown using the genome editing technology. Again, if this is the level, let's say about 500 microgram per gram fresh weight is the level of lycopene in wild type, we call it wild type, which is non-edited plant. You can see it has increased about 5 to 6 times more in one of the lines. They call lycopene 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 different lines, genome-edited lines of tomato. And of course, all the lines are higher than substantially higher than the non-edited line, but the one here you can see is about 5 to 6 times higher. And even beta carotene, which is provitamin A, which is so important, and even lycopene is one of the best dietary antioxidants. We all know it. It's very important. And tomato is the best source to have it. While I think current tomatoes in the market probably having very less, and we require more, even for making, for food processing industry, for making sauce, it's important. This lycopene is increased and we can use those as source of making sauce, some of these tomatoes, and also beta carotene, which are very important. And you can see the change in color. This is non-edited, and these are the one tomatoes with high lycopene. They're more reddish, you can see here, as we increase the content of lycopene. Similarly, in India, the efforts are going on to increase the lycopene again in banana. As you can see here in this product, which is genome edited. And this is the first genome edited product from India, banana. And this is the non-edited. You can see here, it's again about 6 times higher, 6-fold high beta carotene is present in here. And this is our former Honorable Minister of Science and Technology, trying to display this during his visit to the institution. This is a National Agri-Food Biotechnology Institution in one of the states in India, in Punjab. I'm sure you all know about it in Mohali, where these tomatoes, these bananas are being developed using genome editing technology. But here on, what I'm trying to show you again, that not only biofortification with one mineral, one nutrient, one amino acid is important. No, we need more of them. So multi-biofortification of food crops is important. And not only that, we're talking of nutrition security, I mentioned before, for the benefit of farmers, we also need higher yields of those crops where we are going to do this multi-biofortification. So the idea is that therefore can we combine, for example, vitamin 1 or vitamin 2. These are not named. I'm just talking vitamin 1 could be vitamin C or vitamin A or provitamin A or vitamin D or any other vitamin, or one mineral could be zinc, iron, or calcium, or agronomic traits, for example, resistance to disease, high yield, resistance to insect pests, all could be combined through a particular gene construct, variation of genes, where we go on for multiplex genome editing, we call it, which is possible. And we do it all in elite crop variety, which is otherwise high yielding, and we can talk of rice, potato, wheat, cassava, sweet potato, maize, plantain. These are some of the examples which are being worked out for the multi-biofortification by the Harvest Plus program. And many of the scientists across the world, they're talking about it. So this is the future of some of those technologies like genome editing, for improving not only nutrition, in them, but also other agronomic traits. And this is another example where I'm trying to show you, particularly to the students or even otherwise to the consumers and that to the participants, is that, let's say about thousands of years ago, 10,000 of years ago, we had wild species, and our forefathers and all, they collected some of the best looking or the best phenotypes, whatever they found. We call them as early domesticates, and today we have these modern varieties. And what the difference here is that you can see here the genes. These are the genes actually shown in these boxes of different colors. Some of those red and yellow, you don't find them here. Whereas those were important for nutrition and for climate resilience. For example, this is the tomato, which is high lycopene versus this tomato, which is otherwise a table tomato, prevalent in being used by all of us. So this is a result coming from genes coming from these wild species, and this is that wild species shown here. Now, so genome editing now can even help transform these wild species, directly, to cultivated types, retaining their climate resilience as well as high nutrition. This is directly, making these wild species to cultivated types using genome editing, and more importantly, retaining two very important, factors in traits like climate resilience and high nutrition. Some of them are highly nutrition rich. Now, this is just, I'm giving an example of tomato, which has been achieved. This is a wild tomato, okay? And this is the genome edited tomato. And this has been just done in about 2 to 4 years of time. Whereas if this process, you talk about it, converting wild species to these cultivated types can take hundreds of years. Even using conventional plant breeding technologies, which we have been using, it will take no less than 20 years. But whereas if you do this conversion of this wild type with all those good characteristics, including high nutrition, to a high yielding as well as high nutrient rich tomato, and which is domesticated, cultivated type, this can be achieved in 2 to 4 years of time. These are some of the details here given of the genes, which we need to mutate using the technology of genome editing. Similarly, in rice, there's a possibility which has been demonstrated, that if you have a wild rice, this could be converted to a cultivated rice, which is already been cultivated, let's say, which our farmers are cultivating. That's a traditional domestication. I said before, it takes, thousands of years ago, thousands of years, and there's loss of genetic diversity. We lost those genes related to nutrition and climate resilience. Whereas using genome editing, it's written here several years, but it could be done in, I mentioned before, 2 to 4 years. And when you retain all the genetic diversity, those genes will all be retained, except that it will have high nutrition, it will have high environmental adaptation, it will have a high climate resilience. And in India, we are fortunate that we have all those resources of some of those wild species. I'm talking about it, not that every country in the world will have those resources, but in India, we are fortunate. We have a gene bank, also called it seed bank, which is second largest in the world, and where we have all those resources, bioresources available of about 1,500 crop species for food and agriculture, and which is being always visited and appreciated by, this is Dr. Swaminathan, this is Madam Mary Haga, one of the honorable ministers from Norway, and who was executive director of, Global Crop Diversity Trust, and one of our honorable ministers when he joined. I mean, they all, will appreciate the kind of gene bank, the kind of resources we have, and even those could be directly utilized, for high nutrition purposes. I'm not going to talk about that. There's many of them which are still grown in wild, and they are even 4 to 5 times higher level of some of those phytonutrients. You don't have to, really speaking, even fortify them or even biofortify them. They're already biofortified. Only thing is they have not got any kind of a reach to the market. They don't produce enough quantity or, the yield, so that the farmers will not get very good price. So they are not, being cultivated heavily. But still there is a possibility. We have large number of those species which can be grown. And this is something, again, I'm just trying to remind the viewers, the participants today, that genome editing is so very important. It's the future of not only India's agriculture sector, but the global food security and nutrition security. And this technology has a lot of benefits and is here to stay. And we must try to take as much advantage of this as is possible. So while I know that probably you were not prepared for such a technical presentation when we talk of only nutrition and technologies, but here I thought, as I discussed with the organizers, whether there is a possibility of talking about this technology, which is revolutionizing the whole world, I must tell you, and our youngster students, even those who are nutrition experts, must try to use it. It's not very difficult to use this technology, and we can take its benefit forward. So with this, I thank you, friends, and if there are certain questions, I'll be happy to take those questions. And here is my contact email. If anyone would like to contact me for further details regarding this, what I presented today. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, sir, for an excellent presentation. From what I understand, that this technology of genome editing can definitely be used to eradicate the nutrition deficiencies in our country, specifically the micronutrient deficiencies. Coming to a couple of questions. I have a question before I go to the other one.
So just a second, Sheetal, Dr. Sheetal. You all can share your questions in chat box, please. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Sheetal.
Yeah. So what are your views on GM crops in our country?
Well, GM crops, of course, we're all making effort, as science-based technology. This is a wonderful technology, and there's nothing to fear about it, whether with regard to biosafety assessment to environment or to the human health or to the livestock or to animals or to microbes or to the environment. These have all been tested over time, and countries like US, where it was first commercialized, in 1996, you can imagine it's now about 25 years, and millions of people around the globe are eating, consuming on a daily basis. Not only that they are cooked like many other staple crops, even for example, tomato or papaya or apple, they are all eaten raw. And several scientists, particularly let's say the scientists of National Academy of Science, Engineering, Medicine in US, and several of those Nobel laureates, in UK, including UK and Europe, actually speaking, have done wonderful analysis in their reports to show that genetically modified crops are as safe as conventionally bred crops.
Okay.
There should not be any controversy over it. If at all it is there, I can understand it. It could be individual perception, how one perceives it. It could be something to do with social point of view of acceptance, or the social structure we have in our country, or what is the government's perspective, what do they want, how we want to take it forward. Those are the issues. But then as far as scientist perspective, it's very safe globally, and there are 190 million hectares, which is not less, is being grown globally under GM crops, in about 29, 30 countries, about a dozen of such crops.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the next question from Dr. Madhvi. What kind of food labeling regulation be required for GM crops or processed products made from GM ingredients?
No, can you please repeat your question? Sorry, I couldn't hear you well.
What kind of food labeling regulations are required for GM crops or processed products made from GM ingredients?
That's what I will still further extend my argument, in the sense that once it has been found safe as conventionally bred crop, there is no need, really speaking, of any kind of requirement of labeling. Nevertheless, we have FSSAI, Food Safety Standard Authority of India, and they have this now, sort of discussion with them now for further food labeling. And GM food regulations are still, in fact, they invited public comments, and public comments were received. And I think in the last about a year, they've been working on it. But scientifically speaking, while some countries do talk about, labeling of GM crops, with different symbols, but I think, my personal perspective as a scientist, once we declare it, once we find it as safe as conventionally bred, we should not, really speaking, try to confuse the consumers further. And that's an advantage. The scientists must convey back the confidence back to the consumers, that you don't have to worry too much about it. And of course, they have their own right to know about it. But at the same time, whether to further add into the cost of it or segregation of it will be important. How structured your system is, in mandis or elsewhere, we have like in India, so we have to look into all those aspects. Processed and packaged foods, yes, could be labeled. I understand it, but again, the question is whether that's required.
Okay. Due to paucity of time, we'll have one last question. How genetic engineering can help in production of nutritionally fortified probiotics, and how much healthy is it for human health? This is from...
Well, one has to identify what kind of a trait you would like to introduce on those, in those, products. But it is very much possible. When you talk about possibility or usefulness of it, the technology allows it's basically been commercialized, elsewhere. I mentioned before, even the microbes and otherwise. So it should be possible to, really speaking, take it up. But however, it undergoes the same regulation as we have in general, nationally, internationally, on GM modified organisms, GMOs or LMOs, we call them.
Thank you very much, sir, for that very, very informative session. Genome editing definitely is a new technology which can work wonders in the field of nutrition. micronutrient deficiencies, and also in eradicating hunger, especially in a country like India. So thank you.
Even tomatoes, I forgot to mention about it. Tomatoes have been developed in Jonas Institute in the UK and somewhere with D3 vitamins and rich.
Okay.
So something which we could not think of before in terms of fortification of some of those vegetables and staple food crops is now seemingly possible and being achieved globally. And there are several other examples which time did not permit me to go through.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks once again for giving such a wonderful presentation. Now, I request Dr. Anuradha to kindly take over for the further proceedings.
So thank you, Sheetal, for doing the honors of taking the question and answers from Dr. Bansal. And sir, you have been excellent in giving us or delivering such a new topic, because I don't think we knew much about it. And there are a lot of questions in our minds. I think you require to be invited once again to probably let us know what are the various researchers happening all over the world regarding this. It seems to be a very wonderful technology that you spoke about, and we really thoroughly enjoyed it. So coming to a wonderful venture that NSI Mumbai chapter is going to go. So we are releasing the brochure very soon regarding one national level conference that we will be having with a Liveness Science Institute. So it's a collaboration between NSI Mumbai chapter and Liveness Science Institute, which is organizing a national conference. The name we have given is Poshan, which will have a major theme ensuring sustainability through food and nutrition. This is also taking into consideration the Sustainable Developmental Goals of UN. And we have picked up 6 such goals, and we have made this particular national level conference. So the venue would be in Nagin Das Khanwala complex, which has been extended in Marway Road. And the brochure and the registration details will soon be uploaded on the social media and the website. We'll be coming up with the entire brochure very soon. The dates for this national level conference is on 27th and 28th January 2023. And these are the 6 goals that we are going to be majorly touching upon. And we have some amazing resource people. If you can see, we have the present director, National Institute of Nutrition, our former directors, Dr. Sashikaran, Dr. Longoa, and we also have Dr. Satish Agnihotri from Center for Technology Alternatives for Rural Areas, Indian Institute of Technology, Bangalore. And then we have Suparna Ghosh, who's a professor, Public Health Foundation of India. We have Anuradha Khadilkar, Director, Hirabai Kawasi Jahangir Medical Research Institute, Pune. We have Dr. Sanu Jacob, who is a Regional Director, Southern Regional Office, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, Chennai. We have Dr. Sheetal Gupta, whom you have just now heard. And these are the eminent people who are also included in our panel are Dr. S. Kaushalya, who's a professor and registrar, Department of Food Science and Nutrition, Avinash Lingam Institute of Home Science, Dr. Rekha Singhal, professor and head, Department of Food Engineering and Technology, Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai, Dr. Prema Ramachandran, under whom I worked for my first job under her, Director of Nutrition Foundation of India, Delhi, Dr. Shubhadra Mandalika, our former convener, and Luke Coutinho, who is attached to Liveness Institute as well, and he's a holistic lifestyle coach and chief mentor, Liveness Science Institute, Mumbai. I urge all of you to take part in this conference, and also we require to apply for sponsorships. If any one of you are interested, we request you to please come forward and get in touch with us. So thank you once again. And I also would like to thank on behalf of Liveness Institute as well, because this is a collaborative effort by both NSI NSI Mumbai chapter as well as them. And now I request Neha to come and give some very important notifications. Thank you very much.
So before the final vote of thanks, just some instructions to all the participants. We have sent the feedback link for today's webinar along with the Zoom links in the mail. Unless and until you fill the feedback form, you won't get the certificate. The feedback form will be activated at 6 p.m. today, and it will be active only till 12 p.m. tomorrow, 11:59 p.m. or 12 in the night tomorrow, midnight. So please make sure you fill the form. If you do not fill the feedback form, you will not get the certificate. We will send the certificates to all participants by 25th of September 2022. So please do not mail us before asking for the certificate. Please wait for us. We'd also like to inform that we will send out the brochures for the conference along with the certificates. So all of you all will get the certificate, the brochures for POSHTICON right in your mailbox. And we also request you please download and save the certificate from the Google Drive as soon as you receive the mail. So thank you so much. And I now hand over the mic to Ashia for vote of thanks. Ashia? Yeah, Asha, you can unmute yourself.
Hello. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I'm trying to unmute myself, but I think now I'm able to.
You can go ahead now.
Yes.
Please put on your camera also.
Just a minute, just a minute. I'm just. Yeah. Am I audible to everyone? Hello?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It has been such an honor to be a part of this wonderful international webinar on food systems approach towards food and nutrition security. Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others. Honorable dignitaries, distinguished guests, and dear participants, on behalf of Nutrition Society of India, Mumbai chapter, I feel immense pleasure to propose a vote of thanks. At the outset, our profound gratitude goes to the NSI headquarters for accepting our request and letting us host this global webinar. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to Ms. Nadia Merchant, Associate Director, and Ms. Madhavi Trivedi from Kellogg's Nutrition for sponsoring this international webinar. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to our distinguished speakers of both the sessions, that is Mr. Neil McGowan, for conducting an extraordinary session on food systems approach, role of food industry, and Dr. K.C. Bansal for conducting a very informative session on new technological breakthroughs and cutting-edge farming techniques. I would like to thank Dr. Sasikaran for suggesting Dr. Bansal's name as a resource person. I would like to thank Dr. Subhadra Mandalika for her valuable inputs and guidance in organizing this webinar. Thank you very much, ma'am. I would like to thank Madam Anuradha Shekhar for her enthusiastic support and for guiding us with a bird's eye for details in organizing this international webinar. Our special thanks goes to Dr. Neha Sanvalka for her tireless efforts in organizing, arranging, and successfully conducting this webinar. I would like to convey my appreciation to the members of the local executive committee, executive working committee, social media, and webinar management team of NSI Mumbai chapter for their diligent efforts in making this webinar a huge success. I would like to especially thank Mr. Gopal Sharma from Lifeless Science Institute for collaborating with NSI Mumbai chapter to organize Poshtikon in 2023 and for joining us for today. Thank you very much, sir. Last but not the least, a special thanks to all our participants for joining us from different parts of the globe to make this webinar successful. Thank you one and all. I would now request Dr. Neha Senvalka to officially proceed to end the session.
Thank you so much, Ashia. So there was a question in the chat that if the recordings are available, you can always view the session on YouTube. The links have already been sent to everybody along with the Zoom session link. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day and a great weekend. Thank you, everyone.